Hey everybody, welcome to Conquer the Cave. That's right, maybe you thought I was going to say Ice Cave Radio. This is on Ice Cave Radio, but it's a new show, Charmer. It's Conquer the Cave. It's our King of the Hill style competitive content show centering around our Discord. That's right. We have volunteers from our Discord. They filled out a form. I tried to find some players that had won some store showdowns, things like that, had some accomplishments, but it's really kind of a fight to see who can be the conqueror of the cave, at least for, 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, however long they win in our Discord. Right now, you get the special role if you win, work on more prizing down the road, but I'm just excited to see some competitive Star Wars content. I'm excited to see what our players have brought today, Charmer.
I'm very excited to watch this particular matchup because one of the players brought a combination of leader and base that is near and dear to my heart. That being said, I'm also a little saddened, a little disappointed that I don't get to participate because I would love to earn that awesome Discord
Maybe
role
you can.
And
I can put you on the list.
My competitive skills.
We can have guest casters for this. I don't see why either one of us maybe can't try it out at some point.
No. I have to give people a chance.
I see how it is. Yeah, me too. But let's talk about our players here. We have Automatic from the Discord. They will be piloting none other than Qi'Ra with the Command base this time, running ECL. So a popular list, a list that's kind of rapidly grown in popularity over the last few weeks. People have finally found the Qi'Ra list that works, exploits her leader ability quite well. We'll see how they do today. They are going to take on Dummy, who is playing double aggression Grand Inquisitor. So that is going to be interesting. You just never know what people are going to bring. A lot of people have their pet decks. A lot of people have things that they're trying out they really believe in. I know this from my aggro boba days, of course. So we'll see how they do. It's not an orthodox combination of leader and base and list. It's not the top of the meta right now, but hey, if it's a good pilot, we'll see how it goes, I suppose.
I know I myself am really excited to see this Inquisitor list, mostly because double aggression Inquisitor is something I've toyed around with quite a bit, but this particular list, a little bit of a spoiler here, is also running Tarkin Town, which is not something that I have explored, and I want to see whether or not that ends up being a pro or a con, because that 5 health is very relevant. So
yeah.
We should probably jump into the game and see exactly how this plays out, because I'm ready to see it in action.
Me too. All right, let's get into game number 1 here. And we have none other than Automatic on the left, as you can see, piloting Qi'Ra, Vigilance Command. And then on the right, we have Dummy piloting the Grand Inquisitor, of course, Villainy as well. And Aggression. I just put them both on there, Why not? It's double aggression. It's not just the single aggression. It's double aggression. And shout out to our players here for being sort of the guinea pigs in our first ever version of this. We're still working on things like getting a card picker to show you, what card is up there, the life totals, all that kind of stuff. We're getting into the players, picking out their resources for our first game. Automatic is going first, and Hylobian Enforcer is going to be the first card here. Obviously a great start for a Qi'Ra player.
Yeah, this is one of those cards that it's going to work well with Qi'Ra, because if you do decide to deal damage to it, you get the payoff with the grit. It's also interesting that you're playing this against an Inquisitor list, because traditionally, if they're not on double aggression, they like to run Vigilance and also include them, but they're going to start with their own great opener here with a Bo-Katan.
It is interesting, and it's kind of like the Inquisitor player has the impetus to be aggressive, right? You can use the ability right now. You could theoretically get 3 damage in there, 25 health base on the other side. That's a lot to think about. But at the same time, now you have what has become via grit, a 3/2 shielded unit on the other side. So, it's not exactly something you can trade into. So I feel like as the Inquisitor player, you're dedicated to go to face and try to just zug your way to victory as fast as possible, right? There's initiative claimed.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like in this particular matchup, you almost have to turn yourself into a hyper aggressive list. Now I know what you're saying. You're saying, hey,
wait,
it's double aggressive.
Yeah, he attacked the Enforcer.
Yeah, all right. I'm kind
of
puzzled.
Shocked by that.
I was going to say, I feel like you have to be the aggressor. And my reasoning was going to be that the later that this goes, the worse off you potentially are.
Okay.
Oh, I see. So the Tarkenton we were talking about, is that going to matter? You do also get to draw the card off the bounty here, so I can see where that start comes from.
Okay. Yeah, you kind of wipe the slate clean. Essentially, you're both just starting the game on 3 resources now. The problem is Dummy's obviously base ability, that epic ability is gone. But that might be worth it. I was surprised, but all right. If you're going to use Tarkentown, that's maybe not the worst time to do it.
Yeah, maybe not. I was about to say, the theory that I had was that the longer the game goes, the worse it is for the Inquisitor player, only because when you see Vigilance and Command together, especially with Villainy, you have to assume your opponent's card pool includes things like Overwhelming Barrage, Darth Vader, Avenger, all of these late game kind of bombs that will clean things up. And so I feel like the Inquisitor player should be trying to take advantage of the speed available, but instead being a little bit more measured. Maybe they just didn't like what their opening hand was and wanted that card draw as well.
It could be. I mean, the Toro Calican played now, so the 3/5 obviously going to be strong. It looks like they went right to the next action phase, so no Inquisitor usage there. Still no damage done on either side. So, maybe they're Bounty Hunter in the hand of Dummy right now to try to get that ready Toro for, less damage than the Grand Inquisitor would allow. You could get multiple attacks going, too, if you include the Grand Inquisitor hero ability, or leader ability, rather, with another Bounty Hunter played with Toro on board. So we might be in for some Toro shenanigans here.
Yeah, this is really interesting because the list that Dummy has brought has some spice that you could potentially use here.
All right.
They are running 2 copies of Bounty Guild Initiate, and that is actually really, I think, important in this matchup because it's a cheap way to peel off shields or finish things off while also allowing you to ready your Toro potentially. And that might be the play. Notably, no Django, so you won't see like a 4-drop Bounty Hunter here by Dummy, but the Initiate could end up being a pretty solid play.
Keeping track of damage on bases in the upper left and right of our screen here. Again, it's janky, but hey, there he is. There's the Bounty Guild Initiate. Interesting. That's one of our spoiler cards. And that's gonna let him ready Toro if he wants to here with the damage on the Bounty Guild Initiate.
And it cleans up that Sentinel.
It does indeed, yeah. Again, forgive us for the janky life total setup at the moment. We're kind of we wanted to get this stuff out here, but we're going to be working on the UI as we go. Hopefully it's good enough.
This is just version 1.
That's right. I wouldn't even call it version 1. This is like the beta test of the overlay. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Either way, pretty clean clearing of the board there. Looks like it's going to be a takedown. And that is a nice promo takedown to remove Toro Calican there. So does use a lot of resources on the side of Automatic, but that is a unit that was about to get very scary.
Yeah, it is a unit that was about to get scary, and I think one of the things that is often kind of overlooked about Toro is because he starts with 5 health and you can ready him with his ability, you can ready him with the Sith Inquisitor, obviously.
Yeah.
But also there are several cards in the deck that allow you to re-ready a unit. So because this is double aggression, you have to assume 3 copies of aggression exist in the list. That 3 attack can very easily become 9 on a turn. And so cleaning it up and just maintaining a healthy life total, I think, is going to be the priority here for Auto, specifically because, just a bit of a spoiler here, taking a look at their list, they don't have a lot of natural healing in their list. They do have access to some Restore on Consortium Starfighter, but there's not a lot of other healing available, which is a bit peculiar for Vigilance and Command traditionally.
Yeah, I wonder, if it's just a matter of, I've got the board control. I don't need it from Automatic's side. That could be it. We did see 3 damage get in there from Bo-Katan off of the Grand Inquisitor ability. So base health still very low. Oh, it's going to be an ECL activation here from Automatic. What's going to come out? It's going to be, Gideon Ask. All right.
Tapping 5 means it's going to either be Gideon or Rook. And Gideon is somebody that I really like. I traditionally play Iden when I go with this color combination or aspect combination, but Gideon, part of that Inferno squad, is a great choice when you use Energy Conversion Lab, because he can pick something off, and even if there's nothing else on the board, he can still give himself the experience token.
Right, so still sitting at 6-3 overall because of that XP token after the 3 damage taken from trading into the Bo-Katan. Meanwhile, it's going to be, oh, okay, never mind. That's going to be 4 damage from the open fire to remove Gideon Hask. So the answer is there for Dummy, it looks like. There's been a lot of board control, and I want to go back to what you were saying earlier, Charmer, where the longer the game goes, the scarier things get for the aggro player, the scarier things get for Dummy in this case, where at some point, I feel like the big stuff is going to start coming out for Automatic, and, you know, will Dummy have an answer for it then if he hasn't done enough damage to base?
Yeah, part of me is wondering if Dummy traditionally pilots more like a combo deck, because I have seen players pilot the Inquisitor list one of 2 different ways. Some do it hyper aggressively, essentially using the hero ability, the leader ability to just always get that initial damage in. But there are some players that will treat it more like a combo deck and use, like I was saying, cards like Aggression or some of the other options to just ready the same unit over and over again. Yeah. And if that's the case, you know, as I'm looking over at the list, I do see we have 3 copies of Chrysanthemum as well as the Clan Challengers. Clan Challengers is a great card to treat like a combo piece because it has 3 attack power, but with the raid swings for 6. And so if you are just trying to keep control of the board and then set that up so that you can swing for like 6, 12, 18, that makes sense.
Yeah, that is true. Did you see if he swung in earlier with the Bounty Guild Initiate? I might have missed that. I want to make sure I didn't miss any damage. There is the attack, though, from Qi'Ra, and that's going to be 4 damage done over to Dummy's side of things.
So to answer your question, he should have taken 1 from the Initiate.
I believe so.
Because it's exhausted and there were no other legal targets at the time.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, unless he was just tired. Sometimes you're exhausted because you're tuckered out.
This is another thing where it's like I'm setting this up and I'm like, I didn't think that I needed to tell everyone to keep track of their health on their bases. There are people out there that keep track of it on a notepad. And when we have to arrange the screens like this, we have to cut it off. So there you go. The more you know. You're learning in real time with us.
All right. So they are going to ready up some resources here, and this is going to be a pretty big deal for Dummy because we're approaching that 6 resource turn. So that leader has the potential to get a couple of activations. Unfortunately, only the Initiate on the board, so you can't do more of what I was describing with that combo turn, but that is something that, again, you very often do see with this list, where if you already have an existing thing, you can attack with it. You can use the leader ability, attack with it again, then deploy the Inquisitor, swing with the Inquisitor, ready, and then attack again. Now, that is, of course, all assuming that your opponent doesn't interact with your board at all, but it is kind of what you are aiming for with a list like this. We are going to see 5, though, so I expect this to be either a Chrysanthemum or not, and no bounty on the side of Auto, so just going to come in exhausted.
Yep, that's right. Nothing the Grand Inquisitor leader ability can't handle, though, if he does want to ready that Chrysanthemum. And he does ready it. Where is the bounty, though? Not quite sure what, unless he's about to use the Grand Inquisitor ability. I'm trying to figure out what would be readying it. Yeah, maybe there's a little discussion there.
Oh, so I wonder if he was asking a question. When I say he, I mean Otto. I wonder if Otto is asking because there is a bounty hunter on the side of Dummy, but not a unit with bounty. So perhaps it was just a clarification there.
Could have been, yeah, could have been. Yep. Definitely possible. But yeah, it will remain exhausted for now. Definitely does not enter ready with the current board state. And we'll have to see if Grand Inquisitor is used there. Wouldn't be bad. Would not be bad at all to get that attack here, but we'll see if that comes later. Another High Lobian Enforcer coming down. That's that 1/4 with Grit, and that does have the bounty of draw a card. So if only Chrysanthemum had come out one action later, he could have come out ready there. That's one of those things where Dummy's looking at this board now. He's like, oh man, could I have done something else? I guess like I could have attacked in with the Bounty Guild Initiate, I guess. And then that would have made him do something first. You know, that's one of those hindsight is always 20/20 things where it's like, oh man, I was so close. Death Star Stormtrooper for 1 resource is going to be the follow-up play there.
Oh, you know, this is actually one of those interesting bits where sequencing definitely would have mattered. If you would have started with a stall tactic of, I'm just going to play that Stormtrooper, then perhaps you could have then followed it up with the Chrysanthemum. And, you know, recently on our podcast, we talked about things that can help new players. I think this is a good example of, you know, showcasing where sequencing can matter, and sometimes making your opponent make their, you know, more important decisions first and saving your conditional stuff for later can really pay off.
Yeah, I always feel like don't do anything really strong on your turn unless you absolutely have to, you know? Like try to wait as long as possible to do all your strong stuff. And here's a great example of why, you know, now taking a sweet time and Automatic finds the perfect opportunity for an overwhelming barrage. And that's enough, I believe, to clear the board. Yeah, it is. So that's, I mean, thanks Automatic for illustrating our point there. You know, waiting to play that power card until his opponent has spent all their resources, making sure it got maximum value, and that feels like a big swing turn to me in Automatic's favor. Take another swing of that coffee. You deserve it.
Yeah, it's not even just that they waited till all the resources were gone, but they also knew, you know, you were talking about on our podcast that you want to think about what is my opponent trying to do. And so when Chrysanthemum was played and was not ready, you kind of intuit that Dummy is going to activate. And so I think Automatic just said, hey, if I hang out and I wait till he takes that 2 damage, my barrage will give me the full board clear. And that's exactly what happened. And this is, again, why the sequencing matters. And when you kind of go back and talk about, you know, what could I have done differently on the side of Dummy? If you start with the Trooper and then they play the Enforcer, you play Chrysanthemum. Now Chrysanthemum's ready without having to take the 2, which means that the overwhelming barrage is not as effective.
Yeah, exactly.
That entire turn structure changes by 1 choice.
It's huge, and that's one of the things I love about the game is just how much the ordering and the player decisions matter action to action, and that all resulted in the leader trade in the end. So Grand Inquisitor kind of used just to essentially clear the Qi'Ra and send us both back to square one on the leader side of things. Now the life total's still very even here. But now that we're getting into these resource turns, or we're getting into 7 resources here, you start to get worried on the Qi'Ra side about things, big things coming out, right? Like the Darth Vader from set 1. There's some scary stuff we're getting to around this amount of resources. And I don't know, do you think, I mean, we're double red. Do you think there's actually, do you think there's a Jabba's Rancor in there and all that? You know, well, I guess I should say we know there's not. We can see the deck list. I was trying to be dramatic, but
yeah, if I'm Dummy, I think I'm just worried about the standard stuff. So Darth Vader obviously stands out as a powerful 7-drop. If I had seen a little more underworld options, I might think maybe something like a Darth Maul to catch somebody by surprise as well. Sure. We do know that there's the Enforcers, for example. So there are some things that you can kind of pile the damage off to, and that's very relevant in a Qi'Ra list, because if they have the shield token, then when Maul transfers the damage, the shield eats it all. So it's not as weird as it sounds. Hey, speaking of Chrysanthemum with bounty.
There you go. Now he comes in ready. That Lobian Enforcer on the other side has a native bounty, and that looks like some removal.
Of the dark side.
That's right. A little bit of glare on there, but you know what the 3 resources turn, which one it was. Power of the dark side removes Chrysanthemum, and you know, it's starting to look a little bit grim on the board side for Dummy, because, you know, the hand size probably isn't large at the moment with a lot of resources out there. 2 cards in hand for Automatic there. And, you know, good amount of damage. Okay. Inferno 4, getting a little bit of stuff in space here.
Yeah, that space presence is going to be a pretty big deal. If only because as the control player, you'd like to get some chip damage in so that when you do play a bomb, it doesn't take more than, say, 2 turns to finish them off. You don't want to give your opponent any sort of window. Again, just to finish the thought from earlier, I was going to say, if I'm Dummy, I have to assume that there are cards like Avenger in there, and that's likely how you establish late game control. Ultimately, though, I was going to say, it looks like Dummy is at 9 after that swing.
That's right. Yep.
I feel like Dummy just wishes they had a lot more damage on that opposing base at this point in the game than the 4. Having to do the leader trade earlier was so brutal because not only did it slow down your board presence, but again, because of the timing, your Inquisitor, the whole reason Inquisitor was lost was because the overwhelming barrage gave the +2/+2.
Yeah, I go back to even the first turn where it's like if you are if you're playing a double red, Grand Inquisitor, I kind of feel like you just want to get in there as soon as possible and just get damage done to the base and, make them trade with you, right? Even if there is, not the greatest trade on your side because of shield tokens and things from Qi'Ra, keep playing stuff, keep going to face as much as possible and make them be the attackers into you on board, because otherwise you end up in situations like this, don't you? Where you get deep into the game, lots of resources, but no real threats to play out compared to what they have access to. So it's I'm worried for Dummy here. He's going to play a 5th brother, Hyperfoil 5th brother, very nice looking card, but how long is it going to live?
And that is the question, because not only does Automatic have a greater board presence, but they've got 8 resources available.
Yeah.
This is a list that does have a lot of very effective removal. We did see the 1 Power of the Dark Side earlier, but if your opponent is running Vigilance, you have to assume that they have cards like Takedown. We saw the 1 Overwhelming Barrage as well.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert, there's a Super Laser Blast in this list, though I don't think that is the desired answer. However,
Snoke,
this is a card I'm very excited to see. Not the Snoke. I was about to say the Saw Gerrera, but the Snoke is very relevant as well.
I mean, yeah, they give the -2 across the board, doesn't kill anything outright, but does really reduce the potential that you have coming in from the Grand Inquisitor side. And, essentially with everything 2 health left, suddenly that Grand Inquisitor ability will just straight up kill the cards on Dummy's side. It wouldn't let them survive to be readied. So it effectively turns off Grand Inquisitor for the board that Dummy has right now. That is rough. I'm excited too, though, about the Saw Gerrera. I'll echo that as well. In case you're not as familiar with that card, because it's not one we see a ton, it says an additional cost for each opponent to play an event. They must deal 2 damage to their base. So yeah, it puts a penalty on you for playing events here, which is a fun card to throw out there in an aggro deck, especially if you're putting a lot of damage pressure on your opponent anyway. At this point in this game, it's not super impactful, but I do like it in double aggression.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons that I was expecting Dummy to begin this game a bit more aggressive in nature, because Saw Gerrera has the potential to be that kind of closer. In many ways, he is a budget or a bargain version of Crate Dragon, where you get a 5/4 for 4, but also any of their kind of premier removal, they're going to have to take damage in order to do it. Now, obviously, it's not as impactful as a Crate Dragon, but it can still certainly get the job done when you're trying to be aggressive.
Yeah. No new resources put down for Dummy, just readies everything and draws the 2 cards. Meanwhile, on the side of Automatic, looks like we're up to 9 resources here. So we'll see what's out there. I mean, in this list, looking at the top end, we do have things like Darth Vader and Avenger. Yeah, Avenger,
I was going to say
Relentless.
Avenger.
Yep.
Avenger is, I think, the real threat here, because not only does it remove the lone unit that Dummy has, but a combination of both Snoke and Avenger makes it very, very hard for Dummy to develop anything. This is an interesting way to slow Automatic down, though. Gonna go give into anger on the Snoke.
I mean, it's fun, how effective is it? But
no, it's great. It gets rid of the Snoke. It's gonna force him. Oh, it's not. It's so close to getting rid. No, it's so close. So it normally would. However, the -2/-2 from the Snoke is going to keep the Snoke alive.
Yeah, exactly. It was it does slow things down a little bit in that it keeps a little bit of damage off of Dummy's base, but man, it would have been way cool if he would have been able to use it to just remove the Snoke too. And I do like that inclusion of that card in the list too, because you can have those surprising moments. Now, this could potentially get rid of the Snoke. You could do that 4 damage to a unit as one of those, and that is going to be one of the choices with aggression. I would assume the card draw, will be the other one.
Yeah, the draw makes the most sense just because you need to find answers. There is an
Can't really
option
do the other
to,
stuff, yeah.
I was going to say to destroy upgrades, and I believe we have the shield token on the Enforcer, but that's, I think, a much lower priority at this point.
That's right. 2 damage coming in from Inferno 4. So Automatic just using what they've got on the board before committing anything from hand. Another 3 damage coming in from the Heilbund Enforcer, I believe, as well. +2 at the grit there. That's right.
And there is the Vader.
Yep. Nothing to even ambush into, but, you know, you're happy just going in and theoretically grabbing a 3 cost worth of villainy from your deck with this.
Yeah, I think at this stage, the sorts of things that you're hoping to find would be either like the client. So earlier I had talked about how Star Viper is the only like natural healing. Technically, the client handing out bounties can also get the job done. If you don't want to grab that, or you want to do a bit of mix and match, there should, I believe, still just be 1 Enforcer left in the list, and you can pair that with like a Pike Sentinel.
Looks like that's just going to be a concede from Dummy with game 1, and you can't blame him. I mean, with the board state things we're at, there was just no coming back from that on the Grand Inquisitor side, and so that's going to be game 1 Automatic with a 1-game lead. We're back here with game number 2 here on Conquer the Cave. It was Automatic taking game number 1 on the Qi'Ra with the ECL, and Dummy, you know, a little bit of a slow start with this list. Didn't have the explosive turns that we were kind of expecting from the Grand Inquisitor, but hey, it's a best of 3, so always a chance to come back.
Yeah, I'm curious to kind of watch what Dummy does in these early turns, because one of the things I think you and I were expecting was a bit of a faster start from Dummy, and I want to see if the kind of trading for board position continues as far as the strategy that Dummy employs, or if they're going to be a bit more insistent on trying to get that damage on the base. And we are going to see the good old speeder bike, if you will,
the classic,
come down.
Right.
The Scout Bike Pursuer.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the good old grit cards back from set 1, and that's going to be one that's you know, effective in this deck. This was one where people were trying Grand Inquisitor Blue and they would play it because obviously you get the grit. It's got 4 health, so it's going to be living through that kind of stuff. So it's funny to see that one come back. Some people have written off the Scout Bike Pursuer. I'm not ready to do it just yet. We do know that that was one of 2 copies brought in from the sideboard, so I think it's just a little bit more of the anti-aggression package from the Automatic side.
Well, it also does something else that's rather unique here, which is if you have seen your opponent play something like Death Star Stormtrooper, and we did see Dummy play one in game 1, bringing this in from the sideboard makes sense because you can use that to trade into the Stormtrooper and it's going to survive. And it's just, it's one of those things where when you see, you know, double aggression villainy, it's never unheard of to see a Death Star Stormtrooper. It's still a great aggressive start, but I think this being an Inquisitor list, it was probably unexpected by Automatic, and so because they were able to see that one that was played in the first game, they say, okay, let's see if we can get some answers for that, and they brought in the Pursuer.
I am a little bit surprised too, because there are some cards, there are some units in aggression that come in with 3 health, right? So there are turns, because Grand Inquisitor's ability doesn't cost any resources, that you can, you know, play a 2 cost, hit it with Grand Inquisitor, ready it, and get a little bit of damage in on that very first turn, and then still have something your opponent is obligated to trade into. Especially when you're not playing against something like a Cad Bane, right, where you're worried about 1 damage flying around. So the Death Star Stormtrooper, you know, it trades well with other things, but you know, I'd rather see something that can just like attack immediately, you know.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. We did see the Bo-Katan unit be deployed
that's a great example
in game 1. That's a great example. I'm also personally partial to the Guavian 1-drops that also have bounty. But that's also, I'll be honest, that's because I'm used to not playing the double aggression version, but the vigilance version. And you had inspired me, so credit where credit is due, to play the Chaos of War as the finisher and then run all the stuff that makes your opponent draw cards. So you can run the Guavian and the Hylobians and Force Choke and make your opponent draw a bunch of cards and then punish them for it.
Yeah, I love Chaos of War. Like that's a, in case you're unfamiliar with it, that's a card that does damage to each player for the amount of cards in their hands. And so I'm like, well, why not just play stuff that, you know, takes out things on your opponent's side and makes them draw cards too, you know? It's a, I'm glad you're running that. I'm curious to see how that goes. But we're going to see a Qi'Ra activation here.
I will say that it's fun.
Well, fun is important. You know, winnings is nice too, but
yeah, winning is nice too. But
yeah, fun is important. We did see the Scout Bike Pursuer trade into the Stormtrooper, by the way, a little while ago. Qi'Ra activation now on the Pike Sentinel to give that 2 damage, but a shield. And 5th Brother on the board for dummy now.
I was about to say, we have this 5th Brother, but the thing that has been really brutal as far as slowing down dummies' early turns has been these Pikes, simply because as a 2/1 Sentinel with shield, it is still enough to essentially make you trade a couple of units into it, because if you're dealing damage with the Inquisitor to your own units to ready them, they're likely going to be at 2 health or less. And so I think that's why we're seeing so few Inquisitor activations and such a slower start here, because those Sentinels are, again, just absolutely brutal once they get that shield token.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like 5th Brother's going to go in there. Now, he does do a damage to a ground unit, so that can remove the shield. He's actually going to use it to remove the Scout Bike Pursuer here, and that's going to be another couple damage on the 5th Brother. But importantly, because there was no Grand Inquisitor activation, there's enough health on the 5th Brother to do it. So removes the shield with attacking, gets rid of the Scout Bike Pursuer. I'm not necessarily you know, against that play. He is trying to kind of clear the board a little bit, but it does kind of pave the way for the Death Trooper to come in and finish off the only unit on Dummy's board. So it's already getting a little bit concerning, I think.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm a little puzzled by there, unless I missed it, is I'm not 100% certain how they were able to attack the Pursuer through the Sentinel, because 5th Brother doesn't inherently have Saboteur.
Right. It was the on attack. It's the on attack with 5th Brother. On attack, you may deal 1 damage to him and 1 damage to a ground unit on the other side.
Sure. And so that got rid of the shield, but the Sentinel, the Pike Sentinel would have still been there.
No, he did the 1 damage from the 5th Brother on the Scout Bike Pursuer, and he just took off the shield on the Pike Sentinel.
Ah, yeah. Okay. That makes more sense.
Yep. And which it was an interesting way to do it, because you could also just use the 1 damage to clear the shield on the Pike Sentinel and then finish it off with the 5th Brother. That would have let his opponent trade into the 5th Brother and kill it with the Scout Bike Pursuer. So, you know, it's kind of like you're going to get to the same point either way eventually. It's kind of a decision about what is the journey you want to take to get there. So, yeah, I'm not sure if that was like the best way to do it, but I don't necessarily think it was the out and out wrong way to do it. I have to go back and percolate on that play a little bit more.
I could see arguments both for and against it. My rule of thumb personally is I tend to not do my opponent's work for them. So even if I know they're going to trade into my unit, if I can do something else and force them to use that action, then I usually just make them do it. But
I think that's generally the best way to do it. Yeah.
After the Daring Raid, they were able to clean up Automatics units and deploy a second Stormtrooper. But now we have a Rook coming down, and this is another one of those cards that, in my opinion, Qi'Ra loves, because being able to give it shields over and over and over again is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that is not bad at all. So Rook does come in. It looks like that was ECL'd in fact, to get rid of the Stormtrooper. He did the ambush before the shielded activation, so that's why we see 3 damage and a shield on the Rook.
Yep. If you're a newer player and you're watching, the active player gets to choose the order of operations for triggers when they're happening at the same time. And when you play Rook with Energy Conversion Lab, you get to resolve ambush and shielded, and you can choose to do the ambush first and then apply the shield. Which way you do it usually depends on which deck you're playing against. So against a double aggression, something like a shield is far more important, because the only removal they likely have is direct damage. So that's going to require 2 sources. Whereas if you were playing against an opponent that had vigilance and you were worried about something like takedown, you might use the shield and keep the 6 health to keep it outside of like a takedown range, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Here comes the aggression in a very literal sense from Dummy playing the card Aggression. Now, what are we going to have here? Yeah, the shield removed with the 3 damage activation, then it would have to be the card draw, right? Or actually, no, he can remove the upgrade. Remove the upgrade and then do the damage to finish off Rook. It looks like that's going to be the case.
It does look like that's the case.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering if he was going to want to get some card draw in there, but I think it might be. Looks like it's a priority just to remove the unit instead.
So we are pretty deep into this game at this point. We're on resource turn 5, and I can't help but think Automatic is very excited that neither player has taken any damage.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, we talked about this game number 1. The longer things go, the better it is for the Qi'Ra player. And, you know, I almost feel like we're seeing kind of a repeat of game number 1 where Dummy is in that situation where it's like, all right, I got a lot of resources, but I just don't have the big threats. You know, I don't have the big threats that, you know, the player that has access to Vigilance isn't going to have an answer for, right? Now the single target removal becomes really, really scary, right? The Power of the Dark Sides, the Fell the Dragons, the Rivals Falls, what have you. Whatever the blue player has, you know, it's kind of easy to just keep up with what's being played now with the amount of resources we're getting to. So I think it's going to be tough going for Dummy here on out.
Yeah, traditionally, the way you try to combat a heavy blue deck is by just playing a large number of units, because they want to remove things one by one most of the time. Now, I say most of the time and traditionally because in a deck like this, obviously, you do have access to something like Overwhelming Barrage. There is a part of me that wonders if that's why Dummy has been so focused on some of the board trades, is that they might be under the assumption that, hey, if they don't have any units that have, you know, a high attack, then they can't Overwhelming Barrage my entire board.
I suppose.
I am personally of the opinion that, like, if I'm playing Inquisitor, all my stuff is likely either going to be wounded, or I would prefer that it be wounded anyway. So you just kind of have to accept that Overwhelming Barrage is a blowout card and hope that they just don't draw it. Like, you have to almost play like it doesn't exist. And I think that is it's still not great, right? But the best possible outcome.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I mean, you can't really do anything about the Qi'Ra flip turn, right? Where all your stuff takes half their life and damage, and then the Overwhelming Barrage comes out, you know, where it's going to be a minimum of 6 damage from Qi'Ra. So it's, you just can't avoid it in this matchup. If they've got it, they've got it, you know, is kind of the rule there. So you might as well just try to, again, get as much damage to the base done as possible, and then do a little bit of planning for how you're going to maybe replenish your side of the board once that happens. I don't know about you. I kind of go into this matchup expecting to lose my board on the Qi'Ra flip turn, you know? 2 damage from the Inferno 4 on Dummy side. First damage done in the game to the base.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it looks like our Qi'Ra player is on resource 7, and we finally have damage done to a base.
That is so good for Automatic right now. Not as great for Dummy's side of things, but I don't feel like I see too many games where you get to this point and there's you know, only 2 damage done total. It's a Rokai gunship coming out from Dummy here that does 1 damage to a unit or a base when defeated here. Vader showing up. Looks like the players have the space and ground reversed here, but that's kind of what happens sometimes when you have people playing on webcam and you have to flip the screens around to make it fit on this screen, I suppose. But I would imagine, those would normally
I
be
do wonder
flipped.
if. Well, just kind of thinking this through, right? Technically, from each one's perspective, they both have space on their left and ground on their right. So I wonder if they had a verbal agreement where they just said, hey, let's put space units on the left. And then one of them forgot stage left, if you will.
Yeah, fair enough.
That being said, I do want to go back to this gunship, because this is a card that I was not expecting to see in an Inquisitor list. But now that we have seen it, I want to point out that this is another card that would say to me, like, if I was just looking at the list without context, that this player wants to be very aggressive. This feels like a burn card, really.
Yeah, totally.
And we haven't really seen that play pattern out of Dummy. So I'm wondering what this card enables for Dummy traditionally.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It seems like, you know, if you're going to play something like this, you might as well play like the OG TIE Fighters, right? Where that's 1 for a 2/1. So at least you still have a resource floating to maybe play a Stormtrooper or something like that too. But 2 for a 2/1 that does, you know, damage, and it is a flexible damage. It is ground or space on defeat. Just doesn't feel like you're saying, like it really contributes to the mission of the deck per se.
Yeah, it can also go to base, which is why I was kind of implying, hey, traditionally when I see this, I think aggressive list,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that if you want a space unit, then maybe something like a TIE fighter. I'm still personally a big fan of the new neutral unit because very often it's dead
Oh,
long before
totally.
anyone can pay for to take it, but it's at least a 3-2. But because you're also in villainy and aggression, I'm also a big fan of just running Kylo's TIE silencer, even if you don't have any interaction with it. A 3-2 for 2 in space is solid.
Yeah.
And on the off chance somebody does mill your deck, right? If they make you discard from the top of your deck, then you can still play it there.
Right.
But instead, we are going to have this attack now. Curious to see if this is going to trade with the Inferno or no. Looking like we might actually deal damage.
Goes into the Inferno 4, and will that final damage be done to the base or to the unit? It is going to be done to the unit, so that is going to be a trade there. Yeah. No damage to base. Are you crazy?
No, we don't do that here.
No. Man, by the way, I love Mercenary Gunship. Like you're talking about the 3-2. I love playing it, but then I had a weird thing at my local last week where I didn't have a turn 4 play, so I just stole my opponents, and they were just not prepared. They were just like, "What? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I didn't have a card." And it ended up being like a big swing because I was able to trade in a way they weren't expecting. But I was like, "Oh man, maybe I do want to actually pay the 4 for this sometimes." What a great card, though. Pike Sentinel swings in for 2 damage here. We doubled the amount of damage done in this game. I do like that life counter, by the way. That is kind of a cool little Boba Fett life counter.
I really like it.
Yeah.
Even if it was just one that was like an Orabesh, I would really, really dig it. I think that might be my favorite bit there. And this looks like a pillage, which was brought in from the sideboard.
Wow. Okay. So I don't know if this has a giant impact right now, and it doesn't look like it does, because that resupply and that takedown that came out of Automatic's hand were probably, not super useful. There's Snoke hitting the board now, and Dummy's just in a really, really tough spot at the moment. Anything he plays is going to be, -2 right off the bat. So what do you do? There's very little I feel like the Grand Inquisitor player can do to come back in this one. It is rough. It's rough out there for the Inquisitors.
It is very rough out there for the Inquisitors. You are not wrong.
Yep. At least this one anyway. The Grand one. Dummy milling over his options right now. And what can you do to maybe come back? So little damage done in this game, but a lot of times, the board determines the winner as much as the damage on base does. You get to that point where it just becomes untenable for the aggressive player sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm looking at this board and saying, okay, Automatic has, more board presence, it has the health lead, and has better late game threats. If I'm Automatic, I'm feeling very confident. I will say there is a chance maybe Dummy is deploying a hidden strategy, which is when you're playing against, Vigilance Command and you expect them to gain a bunch of health, the way you make it not matter is if you just never deal damage.
There you go. Sometimes the answer is refuse to play. All right, Aggression deals 4 to Inquisitor Snoke. It's going to be card draw, I believe, on the other side there, too. Snoke swings in for 6 damage onto Dummy's base. This is the most damage Snoke has done ever in the history of Star Wars. He didn't even do this much damage in the movies.
You are not wrong, sir. Not wrong.
Oh, okay, and Tarkin Town finishes him off. All right. There we go. So Tarkin Town coming through, clearing the Grand Inquisitor. So there was an answer. There was an answer for Dummy here. He takes 2 more damage from the Pike Sentinel as well, up to 12 on base at the moment. There's the punishing one, Dengar's ship of choice coming down. Oh no, and a Power of the Dark Side immediately. And this is exactly what we're talking about, right? Where you're at this point, you're playing 1 card at a time. Your opponent's in blue. They've got a bunch of threats out there. We just saw a tip of the hand from Automatic too, in that he's got that overwhelming barrage waiting, and Yeah, I don't know if Dummy's going to be able to get anything to stick here, but at least getting rid of the Snoke gives you, a chance.
Yeah, I don't know how you can come back from the Snoke on the board. We saw how that kind of just caused all sorts of problems for Dummy, but the problem is you have to invest so much into getting rid of it, and then Dummy still has no answer for something like an Avenger if it decides to come out, for example.
Totally. Yeah, Lone Pike is going to be the play from Automatic here. That 4/6 that when it attacks, you get to choose. You can put a shield on one of your opponent's units, and if you do, you can put a shield on one of your units. So some interesting plays can be put together with that. I think it's a really, really interestingly designed card. It also has Smuggle as well, so it's got that versatility, but it's a card that's popping up in a lot of blue lists lately.
Yeah, I think it's a card that a lot of people were undervaluing because they look at that and they're like, well, there are some situations where I want to do that, but there's also a lot where I don't want to do that. But
sure.
I am personally of the assumption that if I can just play a 4/6 for 4 in a control deck, and then it may or may not have upside in the form of an on attack or smuggle, like that's probably good enough. And depending on your build, it does also have the underworld trait. So while, again, we kind of know behind the curtain there's no Darth Maul in this list, it is, again, something that you could, if you were running Maul, take advantage of. I really like the card.
Yeah, same. 10 resources for Automatic now. We know he's got a lot of removal options yet still in there. I mean, just things like the Vader, obviously ambushing in, does a lot of work. Avenger, relentless slowing things down. 2 super laser blast main board to clear whatever Dummy plays. And what is it going to be? It is going to be a pillage again, and that's actually going to get rid of the hand for Automatic. That was a Vader and an overwhelming barrage. So
wow, okay.
Interesting moment here for Dummy, actually. What does he have in his hand for 3 resources that can help him come back a little bit here? It's going to be a 4 damage from the Lone Pike onto base. Going to go up to 16 there. So already 16 to 0 in base damage, but maybe a chance with 0 cards in his opponent's hand for Dummy to play something. But I feel like Charmer the Answers are on board already. It hasn't necessarily gotten that much easier, but we'll see. What is this? An open fire. Okay. That'll take out the Pike Sentinels, so the Sentinel out of the way.
Yeah, I'm very surprised at the open fires getting as much value as they have against a deck that does tend to prioritize shields, but I will give Dummy credit. They've been very on point with the open fires every time it's mattered.
Yeah. And the Qi'Ra ability, again, essentially removing the shield, but, preventing Lone Pike from losing that or taking that damage from Qi'Ra's leader flip ability, too, interestingly enough. So kind of trading the shield for full healing on the Lone Pike.
And that's a pretty good trade-off, if you ask me.
Yeah.
6 health is a lot of health, and again, we know that Dummy, as far as removal or options like that, they're banking on direct damage. So
I mean,
does look like the swing was also done as well. So I think Dummy is now up to 20 damage taken, or 20 on base.
Yep, that's right. Another swing from Qi'Ra coming in. And we're moving on to the next phase. It looks like the Grand Inquisitor didn't attack there, from what I can see. And with only 3 power, it's not going to be able to trade with the Qi'Ra or anything like that, or, remove the Qi'Ra per se. So just leaving that readied for now, unless I'm mistaken. I mean, if you're on Dummy side, I feel like, maybe you just go to face with it either way, Let's get a little bit of damage in there.
I feel like you have to for a moral victory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you gotta feel like you did something. You can't let it end with 0 health. But no, deciding to go to the next phase here. So not attacking with the Grand Inquisitor either. Wow. All right.
So we are going to play the Ruthless Raider. This is a card that I'm actually a big fan of, and I'm surprised it doesn't see more play, simply because it's a big body in space.
Oh, wait. I see what happened. It was a concede. Yeah, he was just showing his hand. Never mind.
Oh.
That was the concede. Okay, so it's going to be a 2-0 victory for Automatic. Let's go back to us here. And, well, what can you say? I mean, sometimes you bring a double aggression Grand Inquisitor list, and your opponent brings Qi'Ra, and you find out. Maybe there was a couple moments in there, I think, in game number 1 where Dummy could have gotten a little bit more of an upper hand, but, sequencing maybe kind of held back some of the turns there for him. But smooth sailing for Automatic. He's our current Conqueror of the Cave now. We'll see what opponent will face off against next week. Or next time we do this. Should be next week, I believe, if the schedule all goes well. But yeah, there's our first match. 2-0 for Qi'Ra over Grand Inquisitor.
I am very excited to see what us folks bring.
Same.
I'm already very excited that we got to see a double aggression Inquisitor. I like this Qi'Ra list. I think that it is something that a lot of folks will probably be looking at in terms of planning for the meta. On the podcast, you and I very often talk about, you have to have some sort of game plan against various decks in the meta. And it is entirely possible that maybe your game plan is just like, I race and I pray. That's fine. You can't have a plan for every list, but I feel like this is going to be one that's becoming more and more popular as time goes on. It reminds me a lot of where Krennic was at the start of set 1.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a list that's definitely beatable too. It's something you can play around, but it's also a list, I think, on the player's side, the person piloting Qi'Ra, that really offers a lot of really great skill expression. It's a complex leader ability in terms of how you apply it turn to turn. And so it's definitely a deck that applies to people that want a little bit more thinking in their games, and it's powerful to boot. So it's cool to see. We'll see, what peaks it reaches. I would say right now that Qi'Ra list is definitely like poking into the very top decks in the meta right now. I don't know if it's like right there alongside with some of the other stuff out there, but I think it's very, very close from what I've seen results wise and just my experience with the list. But yeah, any final thoughts here before we close it out?
I would say have answers for Sentinel and Shields. That's my final thoughts, because that really looked like the key point of emphasis in that particular matchup. And long before set 2 came out, you and I had kind of speculated that there might be more upgrade removal that people started putting in their decks, and we did see some of that in Dummy's list. He is running disabling Fang fighters, etc. But I don't know. I was expecting there to be a bit more, but it turns out that Sentinel and Shield are still great, great things. So gotta have an answer.
Absolutely, and that if that includes running a Quetzalonyo in your Inquisitor list, even though obviously they can't be a recipient of the ability, like it still removes upgrades, so it's still going to be useful in that sense. So yeah, you do have to have the answers for some of the strong things in the meta. But like you said, neat to see someone trying out double aggression Inquisitor. Didn't work out today. The Qi'Ra moves on, Automatic moves on, and we will see if they can maintain their grip on the title of Conqueror of the Cave next time. Don't miss it. We'll see you then.